when I take photographs of people who are in great distress, as you've all witnessed, you know, I'm in great distress as well, because I wouldn't be a decent human being if I didn't feel that what I was looking at was an atrocity and it should never happen to particularly the innocent people, because normally you go to war with soldiers, you know, they're trained to inflict death and destruction on other people, but, you know, women and children, they seem to wait for it to come to them. Nobody tells them it's coming sometimes. So when I take the photographs, I already know that what I'm looking at is an outrage, and I'm outraged as well. I also know that while I'm taking that photograph, I'm going to take it back to England, to my darkroom, where I will lock myself away, and I will print that picture until it screams at you. The idea of, I mean, when I started photography, I didn't think it was going to take me to where it took me. I thought, it's great photography. I failed my education as a child, and I went to school, and I thought, this is great photography, because the one great thing about it was it's about taking pictures, and I don't have to get involved in politics. And lo and behold, I spent my whole life treading on that thin ice of politics.
Do you feel, when you've been out there, particularly in these war zones, when you've had to hold your breath, which you must have on so many occasions, and you have your camera in your hand and something is happening which you can't intervene in, which is, do you feel that you are a witness, that that is what you're there for?
When I would have left the Sunday Times office in the old days, they would give you some expenses. They would give you an air ticket. I could have refused to get on that airplane. So once I got on the airplane, I was fully committed. So there were many, you must have seen in this film, many occasions where I could not intervene, particularly saving the lives of men who were about to be murdered. I still have these memories today of various, I can only call them murders, I don't call them executions. You know, men standing in front of you crying, thinking that you can stop this, you can step in and you can, you know, put a stop to it. And you can't. And then the next thing you know, there's a hail of bullets, you know, smashing people's brains all over the walls and things. And you ask yourself, you know, why am I here? And what's this got to do with photography? So, you know, photography was meant to be something wonderful for me. On the other hand, I've, in the end, volunteered to go to these places. And, you know, there are many questions I should be asking myself.
When you grew up, when you were growing up, when you entered the RAF and you thought, what was the instinct that made you want to be a photographer? Was it the beauty of the world? Was it the possibility of self-expression? Was it the idea of capturing things? What was it that motivated you?
I never had that much intelligence to think like your question. I grew up in North London, in Finsbury Park, and I belonged to a gang of boys that were totally destructive. And, you know, we were alienated by bad policing. You know, every time a policeman came, he normally gave you one across the face. So, you know, we had authoritarian kind of lives where people were trying to, you know, to crush our youth and spoil our lives. And when rock and roll came in, it was like having a dodgy traffic light that said green, go for it. You know, you went mad and you challenged those horrible people all the more. It was the best freedom that ever happened.
When did you stop participating and start observing? Like, for instance, those photographs you took of those kids in North London.
Well, the photograph you may have seen earlier of the gang of boys, I had this camera which I pawned and my mother redeemed it. I got £5 for pawning it. And then there was a murder, you know, the background to this on the film, but I wasn't really interested in becoming a photographer at all. I just did those pictures combined with the sadness of the murder of the policeman, and the man who did it was hung for doing it. So basically I'd already embarked upon a career that wasn't of my choice, but it started with even more violence than I grew up with as a child.
And what is it that drew you in your work to the dispossessed, to victims, to observing a kind of a human landscape which was actually in many ways very sad and spoiled?
Well, I think it's undoubtedly the way I grew up in Finsbury Park in North London. I mean, I grew up during the war as a child. I was born in 1935, so by the time the war was over, there was hundreds of bomb blast, semi-derelict houses which we used to roam around and go into because people had fled. There's a passage in Ballard's book about his time, I think it was in Shanghai, when he went back to his mother's bedroom and he saw a covering of talcum powder where he felt the Japanese or his mother was struggling, and there was some. When I went into these bombed houses as a young child, it wasn't until later years I read the Ballard account of that room. I could now see the parallels of me trespassing in private life. And as a child, because I was angry about my father's death, I turned my back on the church. I became very angry and troublesome, but at the same time, I had a great thinking mind that was desperate for help, and I'm not feeling sorry for myself, but I was thinking as a child. I was the kind of child I felt abandoned at my father's death, and I was angry about it, bloody angry about it.
You say that phrase is very resonant, trespassing on private lives, but in a public space quite often. I mean that so many of these photographs that you've taken are a record of sort of travesties of human indignities, of things which would shock us and startle us. And you said, I think somewhere, that someone asked you about your state of mind, and you said somewhere, well, I have nightmares, but during the day, not at night. What did you mean by that?
Well, I've got a very good recall for imagery. I have a very bad recall for things I've read. And, I've read one or two books that I've longed to read all my life because I'm very dyslexic. Even today I read everything the wrong way. But I did read a great biography of Byron and Lord Nelson. I wound up not liking Byron at the end of it. But it's about thinking. It's about, I could be on a bus and have a nightmare. And it's only of my own making. I chose to go to those wars. What do you expect when you go to war? Do you expect a kind of tea party? Do you expect flowers and dancing and gaiety? And, oh no, it's. I went to my first war in Cyprus, and I was the only person in this town of Limassol. And when I heard gunfire, I thought, my God, this is exciting, And war is exciting. It's an indulgence to say that. It's almost criminal to say it. But I was young. I wanted to be inspired by opportunity and the chance to take. But I really wasn't a very good photographer in Cyprus.
This is a sort of difficult question, but there is a sort of aesthetic to photography, and clearly there is in your own photography. Some of that, I suppose, on reflection, when you're in the darkroom, is you can understand that. It's sort of reflective. But when you're there and you're framing an image, do you actually, when these images sometimes are shocking and instantaneous and fleeting, how much does that, is it just a natural reaction to that sort of aesthetic reaction, this sense of where should I be, where should I frame this, how should it happen?
Well, I always know where I should have been, in the right place at the right time. I thought, I can't miss, but one of the things I refused to do was to take a chance and just point the camera and shoot. I always took an exposure reading, and I think I've been quoted the fact that what's the point in standing up and getting killed and getting the exposure wrong? So I took a bit of a double risk. And I took a picture one day. You may have seen it. It was in a great massacre in Beirut, and I was told to leave the area because otherwise these people, by the way, these people being Christians with crucifixes who were massacring all these Palestinian males. They said, "You leave this place or we'll kill you." And I heard this music. And I just whacked that camera to my eye and took the picture. The negative is very thin, but I have made wonderful prints from it. So it's about still being professional and trying. You know, photography came to me as an accident. I almost feel as if I didn't deserve it. So when this great opportunity came, I've embraced it with all my energy and passion, and I hope honesty. Above all else, there is one photo on this film of a dead North Vietnamese soldier, and I was outraged by people who were plundering his body, and they went away kicking his stuff, and I thought, this is not right. And the people who were doing the looting or the body searching, I was with these people and sharing their dangers. And when they went away, I thought, I'm going to make something of this man's possessions, and I put these things together. It's the only staged picture I ever took, because the man was dead, and I thought, I'm going to say something on your behalf. It's all about me in war. You can really become you can overdo it. You can lose, all kinds of feeling, and you can be slightly mad.
It's interesting that Henri Cartier-Bresson, I read somewhere, saw your work, and he said one word, I have one word to say to you, Goya. What do you think was he talking about the disasters of war and the
I think what Cartier-Bresson meant was that he was looking at some of my images. I've noticed that, we only have so many physical human manifestations which we can use with our four limbs, and I've noticed that when people are in these tragedies, they often look up as if they're searching for their salvation before people kill them. I've seen it many times. I remember two men being shot in front of me in Beirut, and they were looking up and asking for Allah, and they went down under a fuselage of bullets, and I could still feel as they slid down the wall, I could still remember that gasp of the last breath of air. They were calling for God. And I saw something the other day on the evening news program. They brought a young girl, and she moved me when she said her faith was Islam, and she said, "I believe in Islam because it gives me faith, and if at the end of my life I discover that there is no God, I would have still felt grateful for the opportunity of believing." And those funny statements move me, so they make me feel really ashamed sometimes for some of the acts that I've seen men doing to other men.
Has there been occasions where you felt, I must put my camera down?
I missed an amazing picture in South Africa. I was sent by Christian Aid to do a story about the AIDS tragedy. And the amazing thing is how many people in this audience have seen anything to do with the AIDS crisis in the last year or so. It's known amongst the newspaper world to be the most unattractive thing that you can publish. I don't know why they have this moral kind of failure to respond. And I was in this town, and I went into this room, and the smell of death was awful. It was a shack, and I said to the woman, "Why isn't your sister in a hospice?" And she said, "We can't afford the taxi to take her there." So I went into the market town and brought back one of those kind of Volkswagen vans, and we were arranging things, and because I didn't have my cameras, and I looked round, and I saw the sister carrying this dying woman on her shoulders, and I had no camera. And I thought to myself, we just missed the best pitch of this whole assignment. But on the other hand, I thought to myself, it doesn't really matter, because, photography isn't the be-all and end-all here. It's about, occasionally doing something for somebody else, It had nothing to do with photography. It made me feel good to do something decent, instead of just stealing images of other people's suffering.